afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. So last week in Shul, we read the Torah portion of Shemini, where we learned the laws of kosher and what we're allowed to eat when it comes to animals, when it comes to fish, to mammals, when it comes to birds, etc. The laws told us what we're allowed to put into our mouth. This week's Torah portion, we begin the portion of Tazria, which speaks about leprosy, the ailment that people got when they spoke negative speech. And the rabbis tell us that the reason why one portion comes after the other is because, as important as it is to be careful with what comes into your mouth, and it's super important to eat kosher and proper foods, it's as important, if not more important, to be careful about what goes out of your mouth. You know, when we were kids in school, they always say this famous thing, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. We know that's not true. Especially today, we've learned the hard way how powerful and impactful our speech could be. How it could lift someone to the greatest heights. And heaven forbid it could put someone on the verge of suicide or something terrible. We could break or make people, not just through our physical might, but through the words we use. And in the world, we've seen over the last years how dangerous rhetoric could be when words are not used properly. You know, when you go to the beginning of Genesis, you read the first thing, God created the heaven and the earth. But how did he create it? Did he go onto social media, onto Instagram, onto Snapchat, onto Facebook and say, hey, let there be light? No. The rabbis tell us that God created the world and everything in it through speech. And in fact, we human beings are called min hamedaber, the speaking ones. There, as we know, there's the animate, there's the growing, there's the animals, and then the humans are called min hamedaber. And the reason is because we were created in the image of God. And just as God has the power and creates through speech, we are meant to create through our speech. When we speak positively, when we're kind to someone, when we compliment someone, when we care for someone, those words create positive attitudes, create camaraderie, create friendship, create kindness and love, and impact these people in tremendous ways. And therefore we're called min hamedaber, because in a certain sense, we are the only ones that have the power, like God, to use our speech in a positive way. In this week's Torah portion, we learn about the negative impact of speech. That heaven forbid, when you say something bad, you have to quarantine for 7 days. And the rabbis say that quarantine wasn't just a punishment, but it was a product of the negative speech. Because when you speak positive, when you say something kind, when you're caring, you unite, you bring together. When you say words that are negative, when you hurt someone, when you insult someone, then by default, you're breaking up, you're quarantining, you're separating people. Think about the power we have with the words we use. The rabbis tell us that God created us with one tongue to speak and with teeth and lips to guard it from saying things that shouldn't be said. When we speak, we have to think, is it true? And once we think, is it true, we also have to think, is it going to have a positive impact? Is it useful? Is it going to help someone? Is it going to bring them closer? It's not just to be true, but should I say it or not? You know, Jeff Bezos, I think it was in 2010, he spoke at a commencement speech. And he said this beautiful story. When he was younger, he was very, very close to his grandparents, and he idolized them, he loved them. And one day he was in the car driving with his grandparents, they were on a trip, and his grandmother was smoking. And it really bothered him. He was a 10-year-old kid. And he started calculating. He remembered that he heard an ad that for every puff of cigarettes, you lose 2 minutes of your life. So he started calculating how many puffs his grandmother gets out of each cigarette, and how much cigarettes she smokes a day, and how long she's been smoking, etc., etc. And finally, he figures it all out. He felt so proud. He turns to his grandmother and he says, listen, Grandma, you know you've smoked away 9 years of your life. And his grandmother breaks down crying. He was shocked. His grandmother's crying, and suddenly his grandfather stops the car, pulls over to the side, and goes over to him. And he's thinking, he's been so close to his grandfather, but he's never seen this. He says, my grandfather can hit me, he's going to scream at me. And his grandfather opens up the door and he comes out. And his grandfather says to him like this, I want to teach you a lesson in life. It's much easier to be clever than to be kind. But it's more important to be kind than to be clever. Sometimes you have something smart to say. You think you're smart enough, you're going to say it, it's going to be funny, you're going to be popular, everyone's going to love you. But who are you going to hurt? Who are you going to insult? Yeah, sticks and stones break my bones, but names will do even worse sometimes. And that's the message of the Torah portion this week. We have the power to use our speech like God, to create positivity, to create an atmosphere, to create and build up human beings. Min HaMedaber, we are the species that speaks. We are created in the spitting image of God. God said, let there be light. God created the world with positivity. We could use our words to create, to lift up, to embrace. We live in a broken, shattered world. We see what's going on. Think about the words you use. Think about the power to pull down and to bring up. Think about the gift that God has given you. Imagine if we didn't have speech. If parents couldn't communicate to their children with speech. If educators couldn't communicate to their students with speech. Imagine if you bought something in a store and it didn't have all the details written, if there was no way to communicate it to you. Communication is powerful. And that's the gift that God gave the human being. To create, to be positive, to lift up. Remember, it's easier to be clever than to be kind. But it's more important to be kind than to be clever. Watch your words and use them to create, to build, to love, to nurture. God bless you. Have a great, beautiful day.